The late afternoon sun dodged between clouds as Sarah Miller wrestled to keep her three little ones in check at the bustling farmer's market. Lily fiddled with her tiny pink tiara, Chloe bounced from one vibrant stall to the next, and Violet, the quietest of the trio, held fast to the hem of her mother's dress. "Mom, look," Chloe pointed, her red curls bobbing with the sudden movement. "That Grandma needs help." Sarah's eyes followed her daughter's pointing finger to an elderly woman, impeccably tailored in a navy blue tweed suit, who was struggling with a cluster of heavy shopping bags. Her silver hair, woven into a perfect bun, gleamed under the light filtering through the market's glass roof. "She's not your grandma, sweetheart." Sarah smiled, attempting to manage her own bags while keeping a grip on Lily and Violet's hands. "But you're right, she does look like she needs some help." The three girls were identical, their individuality marked by small details in their attire. Lily with her pink tiara, Chloe with a blue ribbon in her hair, and Violet with her yellow hair clips. And they all watched the elderly woman with a shared, childlike fascination. "She looks like someone who tells stories," whispered Lily, her green eyes shining behind her small glasses. The lady reached for an apple on a high display, her heavy bags throwing her off balance. Suddenly, one of the bags gave way, sending a cascade of oranges rolling across the market floor. "Let's help," Chloe exclaimed, letting go of her mother's hand before Sarah could react, darting toward the scattered fruit. "Chloe, wait," Sarah called, but Lily and Violet had already followed their sister's lead, drawn as if by an invisible string. The three 5-year-olds knelt, their small hands gathering the oranges with focused determination. The elderly woman observed them, a curious smile playing on her lips, her blue eyes bright with something that felt like more than simple amusement. "What helpful little angels!" Her voice was as smooth as velvet, "and you all look so alike. You must be the Miller triplets, am I right?" Sarah, who had rushed over, came to an abrupt halt. Do you know us?" "Oh, yes," the elderly lady smiled, her warm gaze sweeping affectionately over the girls. "I'm Eleanor Ainsworth, but everyone calls me Mrs. Ainsworth. I live not far from here." The triplets now formed a small orbit around Mrs. Ainsworth, captivated by her strand of pearls and the intricate, golden key-shaped brooch that secured her scarf. "What a beautiful key!" Lily exclaimed, her small finger pointing toward the brooch. "Is it magic?" Violet asked in a whisper, her first words of the encounter. Mrs. Ainsworth leaned down, her eyes meeting the girls' level. "Every key is magic when it opens the right door, my dears." Sarah watched the exchange with a mix of caution and wonder. There was an aura of trust about this woman that defied the mystery surrounding her. "Let me help you with those bags," Sarah offered, extending her hands. "Oh, that would be wonderful," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled. "Actually, I only live 2 blocks from here. It would be a great pleasure if you could accompany me. I have something very special for your girls." The walk to the Ainsworth estate was filled with the triplets' bright laughter as they vied for the chance to tell her their small adventures. Sarah was struck by how the elderly woman listened to each story with genuine interest, somehow distinguishing perfectly between the 3 girls even when they excitedly talked over one another. The house was a stately Victorian manor, its brick walls draped in ivy, fronted by a garden that seemed plucked from a storybook. The girls gasped audibly at the sight of the multicolored roses and the butterflies that drifted among the blossoms. Come in," Mrs. Ainsworth invited, pushing open the heavy oak door. The interior was even more stunning, bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, and an eclectic collection of curiosities. Antique globes, clocks of all sizes, and intricate music boxes occupied every available space. The triplets gazed around, their mouths forming perfect O's of awe. "Please leave the bags in the kitchen," Mrs. Ainsworth indicated the way. "And afterward, I have something very special to show you." While Sarah helped put the groceries away, the girls stood transfixed in the main living room, mesmerized by a large grandfather clock whose pendulum swung with a soft, rhythmic tick-tock. Mrs. Ainsworth moved to an old writing desk in the corner, opening a drawer with a small key very similar to the one she wore as a brooch. From within, she retrieved a cream-colored envelope, slightly yellowed with age. "Sarah," the lady called, her voice shifting to a more solemn register. "5 years ago, I made a promise. Today, I can finally keep it." With deliberate movements, she presented the envelope. On its surface, in elegant old-fashioned script, were the words, "For Lily, Chloe, and Violet Miller, when the stars align." How did you know?" Sarah asked, her own voice trembling. "Some things simply have to happen at the right moment," Mrs. Ainsworth replied enigmatically. She turned to the triplets, who were now watching her with rapt attention. "Girls, this envelope contains something very special, but it can only be opened when you are all together, tonight, after the first star appears in the sky. Do you promise?" The 3 girls nodded solemnly, their green eyes locked on the mysterious envelope Mrs. Ainsworth now placed in Sarah's hands. "And Sarah," the lady added gently, "trust what is coming. Some stories begin long before we know we're a part of them." By the time they departed the Ainsworth estate, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The triplets chattered excitedly about the magical house and the mysterious lady, while Sarah clutched the envelope, a powerful feeling growing inside her that something extraordinary was about to unfold. From a second-floor window, half hidden by a lace curtain, Mrs. Ainsworth watched the family walk away, a satisfied smile on her lips. "It's done," she murmured to herself, her fingers touching the key-shaped brooch. "Now, all we can do is wait." Sunday morning dawned slowly, with rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains of the triplets' bedroom. Lily was the first to wake, immediately reaching for her glasses on the unicorn-themed nightstand. Beside her, Chloe was still clutching her favorite stuffed bunny, while Violet mumbled softly in her sleep. "Girls," Lily nudged her sisters gently, "are we going to see Grandma Ainsworth today?" The name worked like a charm. Chloe sat bolt upright in bed, her red curls a tangled halo. "Yes, yes, I want to see the magical clocks again." Sarah, walking down the hallway with a basket of laundry, paused at their doorway. The night before, after opening the mysterious envelope, which contained only an old black-and-white photo of 3 girls who looked shockingly like her own daughters, the triplets had been unable to talk about anything but Mrs. Ainsworth. "Mom," Violet called out quietly, spotting her mother in the doorway, "can we have breakfast quickly? I want to show my drawing to Grandma Ainsworth." Sarah hesitated, the word grandma catching her by surprise. Her daughters had never known their grandparents, her own parents had passed away before the girls were born, and her late husband's parents lived overseas. "Sweethearts, we can't just show up without warning," she began, but was immediately met with 3 pairs of pleading green eyes. "Please, Mom." Chloe clasped her hands together in a gesture of supplication. "She said we could come back." Indeed, Mrs. Ainsworth had mentioned future visits, but Sarah hadn't anticipated it would be so soon. Yet there was an undeniable sense of confidence the lady inspired, and the look in her eyes when she saw the girls was unforgettable. "All right," she sighed, surrendering to the identical smiles that now lit up her daughters' faces. But first, breakfast and proper clothes. The walk to the Ainsworth estate felt shorter this time. The triplets skipped ahead, their colorful sneakers tapping a cheerful rhythm on the sidewalk. Lily carried a storybook, Chloe held a slightly crumpled drawing of a cat, and Violet clutched a small wildflower she had picked from a crack in the pavement. The Victorian Manor's garden seemed even more magical in the morning light. Butterflies performed a ballet among the roses, and a tiny hummingbird hovered near a flowering vine. Before Sarah could stop her, Chloe had bounded up the steps and pressed the old bronze doorbell. A melodious chime echoed from within the house. Soft footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal Mrs. Ainsworth, dressed in a light blue silk gown and wearing the same key-shaped brooch. "Grandma!" the 3 exclaimed in unison, much to Sarah's astonishment. A gentle smile illuminated the lady's face. What a lovely surprise! She looked directly into Sarah's eyes. "Please, come in. I just made some chocolate cookies." The mention of cookies sent a ripple of excitement through the girls. Soon they were all settled in the living room, the triplets seated on a plush Persian rug while Sarah took an antique armchair. "Grandma Ainsworth," Lily began, adjusting her glasses with a serious air, "why do you live by yourself?" Sarah nearly choked on her tea. "Lily, that's not—" "It's all right, dear," Mrs. Ainsworth interrupted gently, settling into her own favorite chair, a piece of dark wood upholstered in green velvet. "You see, sometimes life takes us on paths different from what we planned." The triplets scooted closer, sensing a story was about to unfold. Even Violet, usually so reserved, inched forward. "I once had a very large family," Mrs. Ainsworth continued, her blue eyes gazing into the distance. "A wonderful husband, joyful children, a house always filled with laughter. But time has its own way of doing things." She paused, her hand lightly touching the key-shaped brooch on her chest. "My husband passed away many years ago. My children grew up and built their own lives far away. Now I only have my nephew, David, who visits me when he can." "But aren't you sad?" Violet asked in her characteristic whisper. "Sometimes, dear." Especially when the silence gets too loud, Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, but a hint of melancholy touched her eyes. "And I admit I'm not as agile as before. These knees aren't what they used to be, and sometimes I need help with the simplest things." Sarah listened, a lump forming in her throat. There was a quiet dignity in the way Mrs. Ainsworth spoke of her loneliness, without a trace of self-pity, only serene honesty. "But you know what I miss the most?" The lady leaned forward conspiratorially. "Telling stories. Having little ears eager to hear the adventures I keep in here," she gestured to the book-lined walls. "We can listen to your stories," Chloe exclaimed, bouncing on her spot. "And we can be your granddaughters, too." "Chloe," Sarah began, but something in Mrs. Ainsworth's expression stopped her. "You know," the lady said, her voice both gentle and firm, "they say family isn't just the one we're born into, but also the one we find along the way. Sometimes, when we least expect it, fate grants us bonds that feel like they've always been there." She rose carefully, leaning lightly on a cane that Sarah now noticed propped against the chair. "Come with me. I want to show you something." The triplets followed her like ducklings as she led them to a specific bookshelf. There, among old tomes and decorated boxes, were photographs in silver frames. One showed a young Mrs. Ainsworth with 3 little girls. "These were my nieces," she explained, her fingers tracing the glass lovingly. "They were triplets, too. They passed away too soon, in an accident. But you know something? I believe that sometimes the universe has a special way of completing circles we thought were broken forever." Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes, finally understanding the look of profound recognition she had seen on Mrs. Ainsworth's face that first day. "So," Lily began, her small forehead wrinkled in thought, "we can really be your granddaughters?" "If your mom allows it," Mrs. Ainsworth answered, turning her gaze to Sarah with a mixture of hope and respect. Sarah looked at her daughters, at the sheer light radiating from their eyes, at how deeply they had already connected with this woman who, just a day before, was a complete stranger. She looked at Mrs. Ainsworth with her quiet dignity and what was clearly an immense heart. "I think," Sarah finally said, her voice thick with emotion, "there's always room for more family." The smiles that lit up the room at that moment felt powerful enough to banish any lingering shadow of loneliness in that old house. Sarah sifted through the bills spread across the kitchen table while the triplets slept in the next room. The small 2-bedroom apartment, situated on the 3rd floor of an old building, was quiet save for the ticking wall clock and the refrigerator's periodic hum. Her fingers ran nervously through her red hair, a shade identical to her daughter's, as she stared at the past-due rent notice. Ever since losing her job at the publishing house 3 months prior due to corporate downsizing, each day had become a fresh struggle to stay afloat. She could see into the girl's room through the slightly ajar door. Lily slept clutching a storybook, her tiny glasses folded neatly on the nightstand. From the moment she learned her first letters, separating her from books was a near impossible task. and even at 5, she possessed an insatiable curiosity for the world of words, often posing complex questions that left Sarah speechless. In the middle bed, Chloe had kicked off her covers, her limbs splayed out like a starfish. Even in sleep, she radiated an unstoppable energy. Awake, she was a small whirlwind of joy and motion, always spearheading games and persuading her sisters to join her spontaneous adventures. Her infectious laughter was the soundtrack of their apartment, bringing light to the hardest of days. Violet, the quietest of the three, slept curled in on herself, clutching her favorite blanket. During the day, she could often be found silently observing the world with her large green eyes, absorbing every detail. Her sensitivity was extraordinary. She always seemed to know when someone was sad and possessed a unique gift for offering comfort, often without saying a word. Sarah sighed, pulling a worn photograph from a kitchen drawer. In it, a green-eyed man smiled beside a younger, pregnant Sarah. David had passed away before he could even learn they were having triplets, the victim of a car accident on his way to work. Sometimes she still searched for his traces in the girls, finding them in their shared green eyes, in Lily's inquisitive nature, in Chloe's boundless energy, and in Violet's profound kindness. The sound of small footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes beneath her glasses. "Mom, I couldn't sleep," she murmured, dragging a plush unicorn by its horn. "I was thinking about Grandma Ainsworth." Sarah opened her arms, and Lily climbed into her lap, her hair smelling of children's shampoo and sweet dreams. "What were you thinking, my love?" "She has such a big house, and she's all alone," Lily replied, fiddling with a button on her mother's blouse. "And we have a small house, but a lot of people in it." Sarah's heart clenched. Even at such a young age, Lily was perceiving the complex ironies of life. "Different homes have different kinds of magic, honey," Sarah answered softly. "Ours is small, but it's filled with love and noise." And a new voice joined from the doorway. Chloe stood there, her stuffed bunny dangling upside down from her hand. Violet's awake, too, but she's shy to come out. As if on cue, a small red-haired head peeked out from behind Chloe. Violet, still clutching her blanket, watched the scene with curious eyes. "Come here, my little ones," Sarah called, opening her arms wider. Within seconds, she was enveloped by her 3 girls, each contributing her unique energy to the group hug. Lily, analytical even now, positioning herself so they all fit. Chloe, practically bouncing in place, turning the hug into a mini celebration. And Violet, snuggling in silently, adding her calming warmth. "Mom," Violet whispered after a moment, her voice barely a breath. "Why did you look so sad at those papers?" Sarah hesitated, wondering how to explain financial hardship to 5-year-olds. "Sometimes Mom has to take care of grown-up problems," she began carefully. "Is that why you don't go to work anymore?" Chloe asked, her large eyes full of curiosity. "Yes, sweetheart, but soon I'll find a new job." "Could it be near Grandma Ainsworth's house?" Lily suggested, her eyes sparkling behind her lenses. "Then we could visit her every day." Sarah smiled, despite the weight on her chest. The triplets had formed a rapid, deep attachment to Mrs. Ainsworth, and she couldn't deny the positive effect the woman seemed to have on her daughters. Lily was reading more than ever, fascinated by the old books. Chloe had found a patient audience for her endless tales, and Violet, remarkably, seemed more comfortable expressing herself in the lady's presence. "We'll see what the future holds," Sarah answered, kissing each of their little red heads. "Now, how about going back to bed?" "With a story?" Chloe asked, already bouncing with anticipation. "Just one," Sarah agreed, standing up with all 3 clinging to her like little koalas. As she led her daughters back to their room, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on life's unpredictability. One moment, she was pregnant, planning a future with David. The next, she was a single mother to triplets. One day, she had a stable career. The next, she faced daunting uncertainty. And now, just when things seemed darkest, a mysterious and kind lady had appeared, seemingly destined to play a significant role in their lives. Settling the girls into their beds, Sarah began to weave a tale about 3 magical princesses, identical, yet each possessing a unique special power. Lily listened intently, likely committing every detail to memory. Chloe interrupted with wild suggestions for the plot. Violet just smiled, her eyes alight with the possibilities the story presented. When Sarah finally returned to the kitchen, the bills were still there on the table, but somehow they didn't seem quite so intimidating. Perhaps it was the lingering warmth of her daughter's embrace, or maybe it was something else, a growing sense that, against all odds, things would work out. Sarah placed David's photo back in the drawer and began to organize the papers. Tomorrow was another day, and she needed to be strong for her 3 little wonders. After all, as she always told the girls, the best stories are the ones that surprise us in the end. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon while Sarah was trying to coax Chloe into finishing her vegetables. Lily had already cleared her plate and was absorbed in an illustrated book, while Violet was silently arranging her peas into small, neat groups. "Who could that be?" Sarah murmured to herself, wiping her hands on her apron. She wasn't expecting anyone, and any overdue bills usually just came in the mail. Opening the door, she found herself face to face with David Ainsworth, Mrs. Ainsworth's nephew, holding an elegant cream-colored envelope. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Miller," he said with a gentle smile, his blue eyes a perfect match to his aunt's. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "David!" 3 children's voices shouted in unison as the triplets abandoned their lunch and rushed to the door. "Hello there, little ones." David knelt to their level, his smile widening. "I brought a special invitation from Aunt Eleanor." The girls' eyes lit up. Lily adjusted her glasses, Chloe began to bounce with excitement, and Violet clung to her mom's leg, observing everything with keen interest. "Please, come in," Sarah invited, suddenly aware of how out of place David, in his well-tailored suit, looked in their small, worn apartment. "Actually, I just came by to drop this off," he said, holding the envelope out to Sarah. "Aunt Eleanor would be so happy if you could read it now. I'll wait for your answer." Sarah carefully opened the envelope, conscious of 3 pairs of green eyes watching her every move. Inside was a card, written in the same elegant script as the mysterious first envelope. "Dear Sarah, in the past few days, the absence of you and the girls has made my house feel even quieter. I would like to propose something. Would you allow the triplets to visit me 3 times a week after lunch? I promise magical stories, special treats, and above all, lots of love and care. David will always be around, and you are more than welcome to join us whenever you can. The girls have brought light back into my life. It would be an honor to give something in return. With affection, Eleanor." Grandma Ainsworth. Sarah looked up from the card to find David watching her with an understanding expression. "Aunt Eleanor mentioned that you're looking for a job," he said softly. "Having free afternoons might help with interviews." "Please, Mom," Chloe begged, tugging on the hem of Sarah's skirt. "Grandma Ainsworth makes the best cookies in the world, and she has so many books," Lily sighed dreamily. Violet said nothing, but her eyes were shining with hope. Sarah hesitated. It was true that having a few free afternoons would make her job search infinitely easier, and the girls clearly adored Mrs. Ainsworth. "Maybe we can try it out," she suggested cautiously. "Yay!" Chloe began to dance around the living room. "Can we go today?" "Now?" David laughed. "How about starting tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon? I can pick them up and drop them off at 5. "You don't have to go to all that trouble," Sarah began, but David cut her off gently. "Please, it would be my pleasure." "Besides," Aunt Eleanor insisted, "she's very excited about tomorrow's preparations." The triplets immediately launched into planning for the next day. Lily wanted to bring her favorite book to show Mrs. Ainsworth. Chloe couldn't stop talking about all the games they would play, and Violet smiled, holding tight to her security blanket. Tomorrow, then, Sarah agreed at last. After David left, the girls could barely contain their excitement, spending the rest of the afternoon deciding which clothes to wear and which toys to bring. "Mom," Violet called quietly as Sarah was getting them ready for their bath. "Do you think Grandma Ainsworth will tell us the story about her key-shaped brooch? And show us the magical clocks?" Chloe added, splashing water everywhere. "And read the old books?" Lily finished, wiping her steam-fogged glasses. Sarah watched her three little ones, so different yet so alike. Lily, forever curious and hungry for knowledge. Chloe, bursting with energy and joy. Violet, quiet but deeply observant. "I'm sure Mrs. Ainsworth has plenty of wonderful stories to share," she smiled, helping Violet rinse her red hair. "But remember, behave, follow her house rules, and don't touch anything without permission." "We promise," they chorused, having heard this lecture many times since their first visit. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Sarah sat in the small living room, looking again at Mrs. Ainsworth's invitation. There was something so comforting about the elegant handwriting, the way each word seemed carefully chosen. For a moment, she let herself imagine how these afternoons might be. Her daughters, safe and happy, surrounded by books and stories, while she could finally focus on finding a new job. It seemed too good to be true. Sometimes, she whispered to herself, recalling Mrs. Ainsworth's words, "Fate grants us bonds that feel like they've always been there." And maybe, just maybe, this was one of those gifts, unexpected, a bit mysterious, but exactly what they all needed at that moment. David's black car pulled up smoothly in front of the Ainsworth estate at precisely 2:00 in the afternoon. The triplets barely waited for him to open the door before they scrambled out, their small, colorful backpacks bouncing behind them. "Slow down, girls," he laughed, watching Lily adjust her glasses on the run, Chloe practically fly up the steps, and Violet follow her sisters with more measured excitement. Mrs. Ainsworth was already waiting at the door, today wearing an emerald green dress that brought out the blue in her eyes. The key-shaped brooch on her chest caught the afternoon sun, gleaming brightly. "Grandma!" the three shouted in unison, rushing forward for a hug. "My little ones!" Mrs. Ainsworth opened her arms, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed to erase years from her features. "Come in. I have a surprise prepared." The living room had been transformed. A low tea table was set with a miniature porcelain tea set, each piece adorned with tiny hand-painted roses. Homemade cookies, sandwiches cut into stars and hearts, and a pitcher of colorful fruit juice awaited the visitors. "It's a princess tea party," Chloe exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "With real cookies," Lily added, adjusting her glasses to get a better look at the spread. Violet just smiled, her fingertips gently tracing the edge of one of the porcelain cups. And after tea, Mrs. Ainsworth announced, a playful sparkle in her eyes, "We're going on a treasure hunt around the house." The afternoon passed in a dreamlike haze. The girls learned to hold their teacups like proper ladies, as demonstrated by Mrs. Ainsworth, their little fingers extended with an exaggerated elegance that made everyone laugh. David, who had stayed to supervise, watched from a nearby armchair, occasionally snapping photos on his phone to show Sarah later. "Grandma," Lily asked between a sip of tea and a bite of a cookie, "why does your cup have a golden crack?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, lifting the piece for everyone to see. A delicate line of gold snaked across the white porcelain, creating a unique, gleaming pattern. "This is kintsugi, a Japanese art that turns something broken into something even more beautiful," she explained. "Sometimes life's cracks can make us more special if we fill them with gold." Violet, who rarely spoke, whispered, "Like when Dad went to heaven and Mom filled us with love?" A gentle silence settled over the room. Carefully setting her cup down, Mrs. Ainsworth opened her arms. Within seconds, 3 small red-headed girls were pressed against her. "Exactly like that, my love," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Exactly like that." The treasure hunt that followed turned the manor into a magical playground. Mrs. Ainsworth had hidden small rhyming clues throughout the house, each one leading to a new mystery. Where time dances in infinite circles, you'll find the next message in rhythmic miracles, Lily read carefully. "The big clock!" Chloe shouted, running toward the grandfather clock. Each discovery revealed new wonders: a small illustrated storybook for Lily, a delicate music box for Chloe, and a beautiful necklace with a butterfly pendant for Violet. "They're magic gifts," Mrs. Ainsworth explained, helping Violet fasten her new necklace for my special granddaughters. While the girls explored their new treasures, David noticed a distinct change in his aunt. The familiar weariness in her eyes had been replaced by a youthful glow. Her hands, which were normally a bit shaky, moved with a newfound steadiness as she poured more tea or adjusted a ribbon in one of the girls' hair. "Aunt," he commented quietly, "it's been years since I've seen you so happy." Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, watching Lily try to teach Chloe a particularly difficult word in her new book, while Violet danced silently to the tune of her music box. "You know, David," she replied, "sometimes life surprises us with second chances. Look at them, so different, yet so alike. Lily with her thirst for knowledge, Chloe with her boundless energy, and Violet with her gentle soul. They remind me so much of—" Her voice faltered for a moment, and David knew she was thinking of the nieces she had lost so many years ago. "The past doesn't return, Aunt," he said softly, "but the future can always bring us new joy." "And what joys, my dear?" she smiled, discreetly wiping away a tear. What joys! When it was time to leave, the girls could hardly bear it. Each had one more story to hear, one more question to ask, one more hug to give. "We'll be back the day after tomorrow, right?" Lily asked, clutching her new book to her chest. "With more stories," Chloe added, her music box tinkling in her backpack. Violet just hugged Mrs. Ainsworth one last time, her new necklace gleaming softly. "I'll be waiting, my little ones," Mrs. Ainsworth promised, kissing each red head. "And maybe next time we can explore the magical attic." The triplets' eyes shone with the promise of new adventures. After David drove away with the girls, Mrs. Ainsworth sat down in her favorite armchair. The silence of the house felt different now. It was no longer a loneliness, but a peaceful anticipation, as if the old walls themselves held the echoes of the day's laughter. Looking forward to the next visit, she touched the key-shaped brooch on her chest, a gentle smile on her lips. For years she had kept so many stories, so many secrets, so much love with no one to share them with. Now, at last, she had found the perfect hearts to receive all that magic. "Thank you," she whispered to the universe as the setting sun cast golden tones across the room, making the cracks in her teacup gleam like stars. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays became the most anticipated days in the Miller household. The triplets would wake earlier on those days, meticulously choosing their outfits for their visit to Mrs. Ainsworth. Lily always selected a different book to bring, Chloe planned new games to play, and Violet just smiled, never taking off her butterfly necklace. On one of those Thursday afternoons, as a gentle rain tapped against the windows of the Ainsworth estate, Mrs. Ainsworth watched her small visitors with a heart full of joy. Lily was nestled in a velvet armchair, her glasses reflecting the soft light as she read aloud for everyone. Chloe, uncharacteristically quiet, lay on the Persian rug, drawing in a sketchbook she'd received as a gift. Violet sat at Mrs. Ainsworth's feet, her small hands busy with a simple embroidery project the lady was teaching her. And thus Lily read with careful enunciation. The little fairy discovered her true magic was in her heart. She closed the book with a satisfied sigh. "Grandma, do you think real magic exists?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, her fingers toying with her key-shaped brooch. "Magic is everywhere, dear. It's in the stories we share, the laughter we exchange, and the love that grows every day." "Like the magic that makes Mom smile more now?" Violet asked quietly, without looking up from her embroidery. "Exactly," Mrs. Ainsworth agreed, exchanging a meaningful look with David, who, as usual, was present, this time organizing old photographs in an album. The visits had settled into a comfortable rhythm. They always began with a special snack. Mrs. Ainsworth seemed to have a bottomless well of delicious recipes. Then there was always a new activity to discover. "Remember the day with the shadow theater?" Chloe asked, jumping up from the rug with her drawing. "That was the best day." Everyone smiled at the memory of turning the library into an impromptu theater, using white sheets and flashlights to tell stories. Chloe had been the enthusiastic director, Lily had written the scripts, and Violet had stunned everyone with her ability to create delicate shadow puppets with her hands. "And the day of the secret picnic in the sunroom," Lily added, her eyes shining behind her glasses. The sunroom, a glass and iron annex to the manor, had become one of the girls' favorite places. Mrs. Ainsworth kept an impressive collection of exotic plants there, and every visit revealed a new botanical wonder. "Girls," Mrs. Ainsworth called, rising carefully from her chair. "How about we explore the attic today? I think it's time to show you something very special." 3 pairs of eyes widened in unison. The attic had been mentioned several times, always cloaked in an air of mystery and treasure, but it had remained tantalizingly unexplored until now. David hurried to help his aunt with the ladder leading to the attic, while the girls could barely contain their excitement. When the hatch was opened, a whole new world revealed itself. The attic was a spacious area illuminated by skylights that allowed the soft, rainy afternoon light to filter in. Old trunks, mirrors draped in white cloths, and shelves packed with curious objects filled the space. But what captured the triplets' attention above all else was a large, carved oak wardrobe standing beneath one of the skylights. "This," Mrs. Ainsworth said, her hand gently stroking the ancient wood, "was my niece's magical wardrobe." With a smooth motion, she opened the doors, revealing a treasure trove of old dresses, decorated hats, and costumes of every color. "Each piece here tells a story," she continued, taking out a blue silk dress delicately embroidered with stars. "For example, this one was worn during a very special play many years ago." The girls approached with reverence, their small hands carefully touching the fabrics. Can we try them on?" Chloe asked, her eyes fixed on a red dress with golden ruffles. "Of course, my loves. After all, magical clothes need new adventurers to keep them alive." What followed was an afternoon of transformation and laughter. Lily chose an emerald green dress that made her look like a young enchantress. Chloe twirled nonstop in her red dress, declaring herself the queen of the fairies. Violet, after much consideration, selected a delicate lilac dress that perfectly complemented her butterfly necklace. David documented it all with his camera, capturing moments of pure, unadulterated joy. He noticed how his aunt seemed stronger, more alive, when she was with the girls. The tremor in her hands was almost gone as she helped tie a ribbon or adjust a hat. "Grandma," Lily called, adjusting her glasses under a feathered hat. "Why did you keep all these things?" Mrs. Ainsworth sat in an old armchair, her emerald green dress rustling. "Because, dear, some things are too precious to be forgotten. Each piece here holds memories, dreams, moments of happiness that deserve to be shared again." "Like a never-ending story?" Violet asked, spinning gently in her lilac dress. "Exactly, Mrs." Ainsworth smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "And now you 3 are adding your own chapters to that story." The afternoon flew by, filled with impromptu fashion shows, made-up stories, and countless photographs. When it was time to leave, the girls reluctantly removed the magical dresses. "They'll be here waiting for you," Mrs. Ainsworth promised, "along with many other treasures we'll still discover together." On the car ride home with David, the triplets chattered excitedly about their adventures. Lily was already planning which books matched each dress, Chloe was inventing new stories to act out, and Violet held a small lilac ribbon Mrs. Ainsworth had given her. David smiled, thinking about how life had mysterious ways of healing old wounds. His aunt, who had lived for so long surrounded only by memories, now had her world filled with laughter, hugs, and the kind of magic only childlike innocence can bring. In her manner, Mrs. Ainsworth sat in her favorite chair, her key-shaped brooch shining in the twilight. The silence that once felt so heavy now felt light, filled with the echoes of laughter and the promise of more special moments to come. She knew in her heart that those 3 little girls had brought more than just joy into her life. They had brought the chance to relive a magic she thought had been lost forever. The phone call came on a Sunday night as Sarah was trying to pack the girls' backpacks for the week. Her older sister, Jessica, sounded concerned on the other end of the line. "Sarah, we need to talk about this situation with the triplets," Jessica began bluntly. "Mom's really worried, and so am I." Sarah sighed, sitting on the edge of her bed. From the hallway she could hear the girls' laughter as they played in the living room, Lily probably reading a story, Chloe dramatizing every word, and Violet quietly absorbing it all. "What situation, Jessica?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "This whole thing of leaving the girls with a stranger 3 times a week? Sarah, you barely know this woman. It's been, 2 months?" "Mrs. Ainsworth isn't a stranger," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice even. "David, her nephew, is always there. The girls are happier than ever." "But that's exactly the point," Jessica insisted. "They're getting too attached. Chloe only talks about Grandma Ainsworth. Lily's gotten more books in 2 months than we could buy in a year. And Violet. Well, have you noticed how she's changed?" Sarah glanced at the bedroom door, where Violet had suddenly appeared, clutching her butterfly necklace in one hand and her favorite blanket in the other. "Mom," Violet asked softly, "can I show my new embroidery to Grandma Ainsworth tomorrow?" "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah smiled. "Go get ready for your bath. I'll be right there." After Violet left, Sarah returned to the phone. "Yes, Jessica, I've noticed how Violet's changed. She's more confident, more talkative. They're all thriving. But what about when this woman— Well, you know, she's not young, Sarah. What happens to the girls if— "Please," Sarah interrupted, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's not create problems before they exist." Silence fell on the line, broken only by the distant sounds from Jessica's house, her husband calling her name, her 2 teenage kids arguing about something. "We're just worried," Jessica finally said, her tone softer. "Ever since David— Well, you've carried everything alone. We don't want to see you or the girls get hurt." Sarah closed her eyes, picturing the first time she entered the Ainsworth estate, the tea served in cups with golden cracks, the stories about how something broken can become even more beautiful. "I know it's hard to understand," she began, choosing her words with care. "But this connection with Mrs. Ainsworth, it's not just about having someone watch the girls while I look for work. It's about family, Jessica. Family we choose, and who chooses us back." In the living room, Chloe began to sing one of the songs she had learned from Mrs. Ainsworth, something about dancing stars and golden dreams. Lily soon joined in, her voice calmer but just as enthusiastic. "What about us?" Jessica asked. "We're your real family." "And you always will be," Sarah assured her. "But maybe there's room for more love in our lives. You should come meet her, Jessica. Bring Mom, too." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment until Jessica sighed. Maybe next weekend. After hanging up, Sarah went to find her daughters. They were now in the bathroom, with Chloe giving a spirited performance using a bar of soap as a microphone, while Lily and Violet watched, fully engrossed. "Mom," Lily called, adjusting her steam-fogged glasses, "is Aunt Jessica still mad at Grandma Ainsworth?" Sarah's heart tightened. Of course, they had sensed the tension over the past few weeks. Her little ones were far more perceptive than any adult gave them credit for. "No, sweetheart," she answered, starting to fill the bathtub. "Aunt Jessica's just worried because she loves you very much. But Grandma Ainsworth loves us too," Chloe protested, dropping the soap with a splash. "And she tells the best stories," Lily added. Violet, playing with the bath foam, looked up. "And she understands when we're sad about Dad." Sarah sat on the edge of the tub, watching her 3 little wonders. How could she explain that sometimes love comes in unexpected forms, that family can be more than just blood? "You know," she began, helping Chloe wash her hair, "sometimes life gives us gifts we didn't know we needed, like when you 3 were born. I expected 1 baby, and I got 3. The girls giggled, having heard that story dozens of times. And now, she continued, we got Mrs. Ainsworth and David in our lives. It's a different kind of gift, but just as special. Like the broken cup that turned more beautiful? Violet asked, referencing the kintsugi story she loved so much. Exactly like that, my love. That night, after tucking the girls in, Sarah sat in her small living room, looking at the photos David had taken over the past few weeks. In every image, she saw her daughters beaming with happiness. Lily absorbed in new books, Chloe dancing in old dresses, Violet learning to embroider. She picked up her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, sent a text to David. Would your aunt be willing to receive more visitors next Saturday? My sister and my mom would like to meet her. The reply came almost instantly. Aunt Eleanor would be honored. She said she'll prepare something special. Sarah smiled, imagining what that meeting would be like. She knew her mom and sister. She knew that just a few minutes with Mrs. Ainsworth would make them understand what she had come to see. That sometimes fate has a mysterious way of completing our families. And maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning of something even bigger, something that would transform not only the triplets' lives, but everyone around them, like ripples spreading across a lake, touching every shore with a particular magic. Saturday afternoon arrived with a gentle rain, turning the Ainsworth estate's garden into an even more enchanting scene. Raindrops made the roses glisten as if dusted with tiny diamonds, and the air carried the sweet aroma of freshly baked cookies. Mrs. Ainsworth was in her sunroom. The triplets gathered around her as she sorted through an old box of photographs. David had gone to pick up Sarah, who would also be joining today's visit, leaving the four of them alone for the first time. Grandma, Lily asked, adjusting her glasses to get a better look at a yellowed photo. Who are these girls? The picture showed 3 girls, all in identical dresses and hair ribbons, posing in front of an old carousel. Mrs. Ainsworth touched the image fondly, her fingers gently tracing the figures. These were my nieces, she said softly. Abigail, Bethany, and Claire. They were triplets, just like you. Chloe, lying on her stomach on the Persian rug, lifted her head with interest. Just like us? Yes, dear. And you know what's special? They were exactly like you 3. Abigail loved books, just like you, Lily. Bethany couldn't stay still, always making up new games, just like you, Chloe. And Claire, she smiled at Violet, who was sitting quietly at her side. Claire had a gentle, watchful soul, just like you. The girls scooted closer, fascinated by the story. Violet gently touched Mrs. Ainsworth's hand, noticing how carefully she held the photograph. What happened to them, Grandma? Lily asked softly. Mrs. Ainsworth took a deep breath, her key-shaped brooch glinting in the diffused light of the sunroom. They left for a great adventure in the sky many years ago. But you know something? I believe they sent you to me. Like magic? Chloe asked, her eyes sparkling. The most powerful kind of all. Love magic. Violet, who rarely spoke unprompted, whispered, like Dad watches over us from the sky? Exactly like that, my love. Mrs. Ainsworth drew the 3 girls into a tight embrace. And sometimes when love meets love, wonderful things happen. She stood up carefully, making her way to an old trunk in the corner of the sunroom. Come, I want to show you something special. From the trunk, she removed 3 small music boxes, each beautifully crafted from wood and metal. These belong to my nieces. Each one plays a different tune, but when you play them together, they create a complete melody. Lily received the box carved with books and quills. Chloe's was decorated with dancing birds and flowers, and Violet's had delicate butterflies in relief. Open them, Mrs. Ainsworth encouraged. When the 3 boxes were opened at the same time, a gentle, complex melody filled the air. It was as if the sunroom itself held its breath to listen. It's the prettiest music in the world, Violet whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. It's the music of our family, Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, wiping away a discreet tear. Old and new, sad and happy, all in one melody. Just then, Sarah and David arrived at the sunroom, pausing at the entrance to take in the scene. Sarah felt her heart constrict at the sight of her daughters, so perfectly in sync with Mrs. Ainsworth, as though they had always belonged there. "Mom!" Chloe was the first to notice her presence. "Come listen to our family's music." Sarah approached, joining the circle they formed. The music boxes continued their gentle tune, creating an almost magical atmosphere in the space. "Mrs. Ainsworth was telling us about the other triplets," Lily explained, her eyes shining with fascination. "They were just like us." "And now they're angels who sent us to Grandma," Violet added, her small voice steady. Sarah looked at Mrs. Ainsworth, seeing how the lady smiled through eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing no other words would suffice. "No, dear," Mrs. Ainsworth replied, taking her hand. "I'm the one who thanks you. You brought music back into my life." David, who had been watching from the entrance, discreetly began taking photos. He captured the moment Lily straightened her glasses to read the inscription on her music box. Chloe started to dance softly to the melody, and Violet scooted closer to Mrs. Ainsworth, her butterfly necklace catching the light. "Grandma," Lily called after a moment, "can we hear more stories about Abigail, Bethany, and Claire?" "Of course, my loves. How about we start with the day they discovered the magical attic for the first time?" The triplets settled into their favorite story-listening positions, Lily sitting up straight with a small notepad, Chloe lying on her stomach with her chin in her hands, and Violet snuggled next to Mrs. Ainsworth. The afternoon passed like a dream, stories weaving with music, laughter mixing with a few sweet tears, and old memories merging with new moments. Sarah watched it all, her heart overflowing with gratitude for this unexpected gift fate had given them. When the rain finally stopped, a rainbow arched across the sky, visible through the sunroom's glass ceiling. The triplets ran to see it, their exclamations of delight echoing through the space. "Look," they pointed. "They're the same colors as our music boxes." Indeed, the soft hues that decorated each box seemed painted across the sky, as if the universe itself wanted to participate in their special moment. "You know," Mrs. Ainsworth commented quietly to Sarah, watching the girls, "for years I kept these music boxes, waiting for the right time to share them again. I think they were just waiting for the right people to play their tune." Sarah squeezed the lady's hand gently. "And we were waiting for someone to show us that a family can take many forms." David captured one last photo, the triplets framed by the rainbow, their music boxes open in their hands, while Mrs. Ainsworth and Sarah looked on with love. It was an image that perfectly captured the essence of that moment, the union of past and present, sadness and joy, losses and encounters, all transformed into a new and beautiful melody. Morning began with a surprise. Sarah, who had spent the night revising resumes and replying to job ads, found a cream-colored envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a note in Mrs. Ainsworth's elegant hand and a business card. "Dear Sarah, an old friend of mine is looking for an editor for her little bookstore. I immediately thought of you. If you're interested, please contact her. Affectionately, Eleanor." The business card was for a place called Thompson's Book Nook, located just a few blocks from the Ainsworth estate. Sarah's heart leaped. This was her first real job lead in months. "Mom," Lily's voice called from the girls' room, "there are more envelopes here." Sarah found her 3 little ones sitting on the floor, surrounded by identical cream-colored envelopes, each with her name written in cursive on the front. "Can I open mine?" Chloe was already tearing hers open before anyone could answer. Inside each envelope was a different card. Lily's contained a voucher to choose 5 books at Thompson's Book Nook. Chloe's held tickets to a children's theater show the following weekend, and Violet's had an invitation to a special gardening lesson in the sunroom. Grandma Ainsworth thinks of everything. Chloe twirled around the room with her ticket. Sarah watched her daughters, each reacting in her own way to their gifts. Lily was already mentally compiling a list of the books she wanted, her glasses slipping down her nose as she daydreamed. Chloe couldn't stand still, loudly planning her outfit for the play. And Violet, She clutched her invitation to her heart, a soft smile on her face. Later that day, during their scheduled visit to the estate, Sarah noticed small changes she hadn't seen before. There were always fresh fruit and nutritious snacks prepared for the girls. School supplies appeared as if by magic whenever they were needed, and David was always offering to pick them up or drive them wherever they needed to go. "You don't have to do all this," Sarah commented to Mrs. Ainsworth, watching the triplets play in the garden. "Dear," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, adjusting her key-shaped brooch, "family takes care of family. Besides, you have no idea how much joy your girls bring to this old house." At that moment, Chloe was chasing butterflies around the garden, Lily was reading aloud from a bench, and Violet was carefully watering some flowers with a tiny watering can. "You know," Mrs. Ainsworth continued, "since I lost my nieces, this house has been so quiet. David does what he can to visit, but he has his own life. Your daughters, they brought the music back." Sarah watched as Violet paused her watering to listen more closely to Lily's story, while Chloe stopped her running to ask a question about the book, how they naturally gravitated toward each other, creating their own little universe. "And what about the bookstore?" Mrs. Ainsworth asked gently. "I have an interview tomorrow," Sarah replied, a mix of hope and nerves in her voice. "Excellent. David can watch the girls while you go." "But no buts," Mrs. Ainsworth interrupted kindly. "Remember, family takes care of family." The next morning, as Sarah was getting ready for her interview, she found another cream envelope in her purse. Inside was a delicate hair clip with a green stone that perfectly matched her eyes. "For good luck," said the note, signed not only by Mrs. Ainsworth, but also by 3 childish scrawls representing her daughters. The interview was a success. Mrs. Ainsworth's friend, a poised lady named Patricia Thompson, seemed ready to like Sarah before they had even met. The bookstore was small but welcoming, with a particularly enchanting children's section. "Eleanor told me you have triplets," Patricia said as she showed Sarah around. "What a wonderful coincidence." Sarah didn't need to ask what she meant. There were pictures on the bookstore's walls, some showing 3 identical girls in front of the shop decades earlier. Her nieces used to spend hours here. Patricia smiled at the memory. Abigail always in the adventure section, Bethany making up stories for the visiting children, and Claire. Well, Claire had a special spot by the window where she could read in peace. Exactly like her own daughters would be, Sarah thought. When she returned to the estate to pick up the girls, she was met with a sight that warmed her heart. Lily sat in the old armchair, reading aloud to Mrs. Ainsworth, who was embroidering something delicate. Chloe was dramatizing each scene of the story, using different voices for each character. And Violet, seated at Mrs. Ainsworth's feet, was learning how to make small stitches in the embroidery. "Mom." Chloe was the first to notice her. "How did it go? Did you get it? Did the hair clip bring luck?" Sarah smiled, knowing her daughters had likely spent the morning on pins and needles. "Yes, sweetheart. I start on Monday." A celebration erupted immediately. Chloe launched into a victory dance, Lily clapped enthusiastically, and Violet ran to hug her. Mrs. Ainsworth looked on, tears in her eyes, her smile as bright as her key-shaped brooch. "This calls for a special celebration," she announced, rising with her usual grace. "David, dear, could you bring that special package?" David, who had been quietly taking photos, disappeared for a moment and returned with an old carved wooden box. Inside was a porcelain tea set, each piece decorated with tiny golden butterflies. "This set," Mrs. Ainsworth explained as David arranged the table, "belonged to my grandmother. She always said the best celebrations are those shared with the family we choose." As they sipped tea from the delicate cups very carefully, in the triplets' case, Sarah reflected on how much their lives had changed in just a few months. It wasn't just the new job or the practical help they received. It was something deeper, a sense of belonging, of expanded family, of multiplied love. Lily now had not only new books, but someone who shared her passion for reading. Chloe had found an audience always willing to applaud her impromptu performances. And Violet. Violet was flourishing under Mrs. Ainsworth's gentle guidance, finding her voice in moments of quiet companionship. "Grandma," Violet called softly, holding her teacup with both hands, "can we do this every day?" "You mean tea?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled. "No, be a family." The silence that followed was filled with a love that transcends blood ties, that finds its way across time, that heals old wounds and creates new possibilities. "My dear," Mrs. Ainsworth replied, her voice trembling slightly, "we already are a family. Every day, forever." Sarah looked at her 3 little ones, Lily adjusting her glasses to better see the teacup's details, Chloe counting the golden butterflies on each piece, Violet snuggling closer to Mrs. Ainsworth. And she felt that they were finally, truly complete. Not because they needed someone else, but because they had found exactly who they were meant to find. David captured the moment in a photo. 6 smiles, 6 hearts, 1 family. And in the center of the table, the tea set with its golden butterflies glowed in the afternoon light, like a promise that the best moments were still yet to come. Autumn painted the Ainsworth estate's garden in hues of gold and crimson when Sarah truly grasped how much her daughters had transformed over the months. Sitting in the sunroom, she watched the triplets through the glass panels, each absorbed in her own activity, yet all of them reshaped by Mrs. Ainsworth's love and care. Lily was sitting under a large maple tree, leaves drifting down around her like golden rain. Her glasses reflected the sunlight as she read aloud to a small group of neighborhood kids who had become regular attendees of her story afternoons in the garden. Her once shy voice now carried with confidence, modulating into different tones for each character. And then she gestured, her small hands dancing in the air. The princess realized her true magic was in the books she read and the stories she shared. It was no coincidence Lily had chosen that particular tale. Since Sarah began working at Thompson's Book Nook, Lily spent her free afternoons helping organize the children's section, unknowingly following in the footsteps of Abigail, Mrs. Ainsworth's niece, who had so dearly loved books. Near the rose bushes, Chloe was orchestrating what appeared to be an elaborate play. She wore one of the old dresses from the magical wardrobe today, a sophisticated blue piece with golden details, and directed a small troop of kids in a scene adapted from one of Mrs. Ainsworth's stories. "No, no," she instructed gently. "When you play the magical clock, you need to twirl like this." She demonstrated a graceful movement that sent her dress swirling around her. Chloe's boundless energy had found a creative focus. Her productions were now neighborhood events, with Mrs. Ainsworth always seated in the front row, applauding each performance with genuine enthusiasm. And Violet? Oh, Violet had undergone the most remarkable transformation of all. At that moment, she was in the sunroom with Mrs. Ainsworth, their heads close together as they worked on a delicate gardening project. Her small hands, once so hesitant, now moved with purpose and confidence among the plants. Grandma, her voice, though still soft, was no longer just a whisper. "This orchid reminds me of the broken teacup story. It also got stronger after almost dying, right?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, her key-shaped brooch shining in the filtered sun. "Exactly, my love. In life, just like in a garden, sometimes we have to face winter so we can bloom even more beautifully in spring." David, photographing discreetly, captured the exact moment Violet looked up at Mrs. Ainsworth, her butterfly necklace shining in the same light as the lady's key-shaped brooch. "You know," Sarah commented to David, watching them interact, "sometimes I wonder who has grown more these past months, the girls or us." It was true. Sarah saw the changes not just in her daughters, but in everyone around them. She herself had found a new confidence in her work at the bookstore, discovering she could be both a mother and a professional, especially with the support of their expanded family. Mrs. Ainsworth, in turn, seemed to grow younger with each passing day. The tremor in her hands had nearly vanished, and she rarely needed her cane anymore. It was as if the triplets' love and energy had rejuvenated her from the inside out. "Grandma," Chloe called from the garden, interrupting Sarah's thoughts. Come see our new play. It's about the 3 magical princesses who saved the queen from loneliness." Everyone laughed, recognizing Chloe's new story as a reflection of their own experience. The older lady stood up gracefully, smoothing out her emerald green dress. "Come along, everyone. Chloe's theater is about to begin." The children gathered in the garden, forming an enthusiastic audience. Lily put a bookmark in her book and joined the group, while Violet gently covered the seedlings she had been tending before sitting next to Mrs. Ainsworth. The play was a charming amalgamation of all the stories they had shared over the past months. There were elements from the tales of the long-lost nieces combined with the new memories they were creating together. Chloe, in her role as narrator, told the story with a surprising maturity for a 5-year-old. And so, she declared, twirling in her blue dress, the queen discovered she was no longer alone because she had found not just 3 princesses, but an entire family. Sarah noticed tears in Mrs. Ainsworth's eyes and gently took her hand. The lady smiled, dabbing her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. "They are extraordinary," Mrs. Ainsworth whispered, each one of them in her own way. And it was true. Lily had become a little storyteller, sharing her love of reading with other children. Chloe poured her endless energy into pure creativity, bringing joy and reflection to everyone who watched her plays. And Violet, once so withdrawn, now expressed her feelings through the care she gave to plants and her small, affectionate gestures. After the show, as the other children returned home, the triplets gathered with Mrs. Ainsworth in the living room. It was time for their tea ritual, now served in the special set decorated with golden butterflies. "Grandma," Lily began, adjusting her glasses seriously, "can we tell you a story today?" "Why, of course, my love." The 3 looked at each other, and then, to everyone's surprise, Violet began. "Once upon a time there was a magical house with a very special lady who had so much love to give," Chloe continued, rocking in her chair with excitement. "That she could fill 3 hearts at once," Lily added. Sarah watched in wonder as her daughters wove a story that was both a thank you and a declaration of love. They spoke of magical keys that opened not just doors but hearts, of gardens that bloomed with affection and attention, of books that held not just stories but precious memories. Mrs. Ainsworth listened, tears streaming down her face, her key-shaped brooch shining like a star. When the girls finished, she pulled them into a tight hug. "My little storytellers," she smiled, "you are the greatest magic this house has ever seen." David took a photo at that exact moment. The 3 girls cuddled against Mrs. Ainsworth, each shining with her own special light. Lily with her slightly crooked glasses and a book in her lap, Chloe with confetti still in her hair from the performance, and Violet with soil on her hands from her gardening. Later, as Sarah prepared the girls to go back home, each demonstrated in her own way how much she'd grown. Lily carefully organized her book bag, separating the books she'd lend to her new friends in the reading club. Chloe put away her script, with notes already scribbled in for the next play. And Violet presented Mrs. Ainsworth with a small orchid she had cultivated just for her. "So you never forget," Violet said in her soft but determined voice, "that some flowers need time to show their true beauty." Sarah realized then that the true growth wasn't just in the girls' new skills or achievements. It was in how they had learned to love, to care, to share. It was in the confidence they had developed, the kindness they showed, the wisdom they absorbed from every moment spent with Mrs. Ainsworth. And perhaps, she thought, as she watched the sun set through the manor's windows, bathing everything in golden light, the greatest growth of all was the understanding that family is so much more than a bloodline. It's a garden we cultivate together, a story we write day by day, a melody we play in harmony, each adding our own special note. The day began differently at the Ainsworth estate. David arrived earlier than usual, his impeccable suit clashing with his tense expression. He found Mrs. Ainsworth in the sunroom, where she was watering the orchids Violet had helped her grow. "Aunt Eleanor," his voice sounded more formal than usual, "we need to talk about something important." Mrs. Ainsworth lifted her eyes from the plants, immediately sensing the shift in her nephew's demeanor. "Of course, dear. The girls will be here in an hour. We have time." In the living room, David sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, his hands restless on his knees. "Aunt, I'm concerned. Are you sure about your recent decisions?" "What decisions, David?" Mrs. Ainsworth asked softly, though her blue eyes showed she already knew. "I heard you altered your will," he said, trying to keep his voice controlled. "And you included those children." The key-shaped brooch on Mrs. Ainsworth's chest glinted as she shifted in her armchair. "The triplets, you mean? Lily, Chloe, and Violet?" "Yes, Aunt. Look, I understand you've grown fond of them, but—" he paused, choosing his words carefully. "They're not really your family. They're not your nieces." "And what defines family, David?" Mrs. Ainsworth's voice was still gentle, but a firm undercurrent had appeared. Before he could answer, a chorus of children's voices filled the air. The triplets had arrived early, brought by Sarah, who needed to take care of something at the bookstore. "Grandma!" Chloe was the first to burst into the room, stopping abruptly when she sensed the tension. Lily and Violet entered right behind her, also sensing something was amiss. Violet instinctively touched her butterfly necklace, a habit she'd developed whenever she felt uneasy. "Is David mad?" Violet whispered to Lily, who adjusted her glasses anxiously. "Girls," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, opening her arms. "Come here. David and I were just talking about family." The triplets approached cautiously, noticing how different David seemed from the kind uncle figure they knew. He stood rigid, his usual smile gone. "Aunt," he started again, his voice tense, "maybe we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss privately, dear," Mrs. Ainsworth replied firmly. "This house has seen too many secrets kept over the years. It's time for the whole truth to come out." She stood with grace, moving to an antique desk. From a drawer, she took out a cream-colored envelope, sealed with red wax. "This," she explained, holding up the envelope, "is my will. And yes, David, I changed it recently." The triplets watched silently, not fully understanding but sensing the gravity of the moment. "Grandma," Lily spoke hesitantly. "What's a will?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled gently. "It's a document that says what happens to the things we love when we take our big journey." "Like Dad?" Violet asked softly. "Yes, dear, like your dad." David stood up abruptly. "Aunt Eleanor, please, think about this. This house, all the family's wealth." "That's exactly it, David," Mrs. Ainsworth interrupted with calm authority. "The family's wealth. And family isn't just blood, as you should well know." She opened the envelope carefully, removing a few sheets of paper. "Half of this house and its assets will remain with you, David, as originally planned. The other half will be split among Lily, Chloe, and Violet." "But, Aunt, not so they'll be rich," Mrs. Ainsworth continued, "but so they'll always have a place to call home, a place where they can keep growing, dreaming, and sharing the magic they brought back to these old walls." Chloe, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, stepped forward. "We don't want your house, Grandma. We just want you." Tears sparkled in Mrs. Ainsworth's eyes, like diamonds. "Oh, my little one, you already have much more than the house. You have my heart." David watched the scene, his expression gradually softening. He remembered how his aunt had been before the triplets arrived, the loneliness in her eyes, the constant tremor in her hands, the suffocating silence of the manor. "Aunt," he finally said, his voice different now, "forgive me. I forgot what it was like to see you truly happy." Mrs. Ainsworth extended a hand to him, and with the other, beckoned the triplets closer. "Come here, everyone. Family isn't measured by blood or paper. It's measured by love, by shared moments, by the stories we live together." The girls ran into her arms, and after a moment's hesitation, David joined the group hug. His impeccable suit got a little wrinkled, but for the first time that day, he didn't care. Besides, Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, her key-shaped brooch glinting. "Who said, 'I'm planning on leaving any time soon. We still have many stories to live together.'" That afternoon, while the triplets played in the garden, David watched his aunt with new eyes. He saw how easily she smiled, how steady her steps were, how her voice carried a joy he hadn't heard since his 3 cousins were alive. The will went back into its desk drawer, but something far more important had been revealed that day. The true meaning of family, transcending documents, bloodlines, and tradition, finding its real value in the love we share and the lives we touch. The first sign something was wrong came from Patricia, the owner of Thompson's Book Nook. One quiet afternoon, while Sarah was organizing some newly arrived books, the older woman approached with a worried expression. "Sarah, dear," Patricia began, lowering her voice despite the empty store. "I have to tell you something about David Ainsworth." Sarah stopped what she was doing, her heart pounding instantly. Patricia pulled a yellowed newspaper clipping from her purse. "I found this while organizing some old files," she explained, handing over the paper. "It's from 15 years ago." The headline referred to a financial scandal involving an investment company. Among the names cited was David Ainsworth, accused of diverting funds from elderly clients. "He was never convicted," Patricia went on, "but he lost his license to work with investments. Eleanor took him in at the time, believing in his innocence." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, recalling the recent argument about the will. That same night, after putting the triplets to bed, she called her sister Jessica. "I need your help," Sarah explained, detailing her discovery. Jessica, who worked as a lawyer, immediately got to work. In a matter of days, a disturbing picture began to form. David was not just the devoted nephew he appeared to be. There was a pattern of suspicious behavior, overseas bank accounts, frequent casino visits, and most importantly, a trail of elderly clients who had lost their life savings after trusting him. "Sarah," Jessica said one afternoon, showing up unannounced at the bookstore, "I found something else." David has been visiting a real estate agent regularly. He's trying to get an appraisal on Mrs. Ainsworth's estate. The revelation hit like a bomb. Sarah immediately thought of the triplets, how they loved every corner of that house, how Mrs. Ainsworth had turned it into a magical refuge for them all. "We have to tell her," Sarah decided, her heart heavy. That afternoon, when they arrived at the estate, something felt different. Mrs. Ainsworth was in her sunroom, but she wasn't alone. A man in a suit was with her, papers spread out over the tea table. "Oh, Sarah," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, but tension was evident in her eyes. "Meet Mr. Harrison, my longtime attorney." The triplets, who would normally rush over to hug Mrs. Ainsworth, stayed close to Sarah, sensing the tense atmosphere. Actually, Mr. Harrison stood up, straightening his glasses. "Your visit is very timely. We were just discussing some irregularities." Over the next few minutes, the truth emerged in an avalanche. Mr. Harrison had discovered David's attempts to gain power of attorney and access to Mrs. Ainsworth's accounts. Documents had been altered, signatures forged. But the worst, the attorney continued, was finding out he tried to invalidate the will, claiming you weren't of sound mind. Mrs. Ainsworth touched her key-shaped brooch, a shadow crossing her face. "After all I did for him." Lily, always the most perceptive, moved closer to Mrs. Ainsworth. "Grandma, are you sad?" "A little, my love," she answered honestly. "Sometimes people disappoint us." "Like when Chloe broke your favorite teacup?" Violet asked softly. "No, dear," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled gently. "Accidents happen out of love, like when Chloe was so excited to serve me tea. What hurts is when people choose to harm us." At that moment, footsteps echoed in the hallway. David entered the room, stopping short at the sight of everyone gathered. "Aunt Eleanor," he began, but Mr. Harrison interrupted. "Mr. Ainsworth, I suggest you leave immediately. The police are on their way." "The police?" Chloe whispered to Lily, who explained quietly that they arrest bad people. David paled, his eyes darting around the room until they landed on the triplets. For a moment he seemed to want to say something, but then he turned and hurried out. "He's not coming back, is he?" Violet asked, clutching her butterfly necklace. "No, my love," Mrs. Ainsworth answered firmly. Sometimes people have to leave our lives so we can be truly happy. In the days that followed, much changed at the Ainsworth estate. Mr. Harrison helped reorganize all the documents, ensuring everything was securely protected this time. Jessica provided additional legal support, finally seeing why Sarah trusted Mrs. Ainsworth so deeply. The will was redone, this time with every possible legal safeguard. The estate and most of Mrs. Ainsworth's assets would be shared equally among the triplets, with a special clause ensuring Sarah could manage everything until the girls were adults. But most important, Mrs. Ainsworth declared on a special afternoon with the whole family gathered in the sunroom, is that this house remains a place of love, stories, and magic. Lily, Chloe, and Violet, dressed in their favorite outfits from the magical wardrobe, hugged Mrs. Ainsworth tightly. "You know," Sarah said to her sister Jessica, watching the scene, "sometimes the worst situations show us who really is family." Jessica nodded, finally understanding. She watched Lily adjusting her glasses to read a new story, Chloe rehearsing a special play about love's victory, and Violet quietly tending to her plants, her butterfly necklace glinting alongside Mrs. Ainsworth's key-shaped brooch. The Ainsworth estate, almost lost to greed, was now more alive than ever. The triplets' laughter echoed through the corridors. Stories filled every corner, and true familial love had finally found its permanent place in those old walls. And at the center of it all, Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, her key-shaped brooch shining as always, knowing she had made the right choice by opening her heart to 3 little girls who had brought back the magic she thought she had lost forever. Spring arrived at the Ainsworth estate, bringing not only new flowers to the garden, but also a renewed sense of peace and possibility. The changes started subtly. First, the renovation of the sunroom, now blooming with the orchids Violet lovingly tended. Then, the library was expanded with more shelves to accommodate the books Lily picked out with enthusiasm at Thompson's Book Nook. Finally, the magical attic was turned into a small theater where Chloe could rehearse her plays with all the space she needed. One particularly sunny afternoon, Sarah watched her daughters playing in the estate's garden, which was now officially their home. The move had been gradual, first some clothes, then a few toys, until, naturally, the small apartment was swapped for the warm embrace of the Victorian manor. "Sometimes I still wonder if all this is real," Sarah commented to Mrs. Ainsworth, who was calmly knitting in her favorite armchair on the veranda. "Love is always real, dear," the lady replied, her key-shaped brooch shimmering in the afternoon sunlight. "We just need to keep our hearts open to recognize it when it arrives." In the garden, each of the triplets had found her own special place. Lily sat under the large maple tree, now adorned with small lanterns that turned its leaves into a magical canopy. Her reading club had grown, and today she led a lively discussion of fairy tales with other neighborhood children. "And see," she explained, adjusting her glasses with excitement, how the princess realized her real strength was in her kindness, not her crown. Near the rose bushes, Chloe rehearsed her latest production, a musical adaptation of how the triplets found their magical grandma. Her natural talent for theater had blossomed, and now her shows were eagerly awaited by the entire community. "No, no," she patiently guided her little cast. "When we sing about the meeting in the market, we need to twirl like this, as if we're spreading magic." And in the sunroom, Violet quietly worked on her new project, a miniature garden that told the family's story through plants and flowers. Each bed represented a different chapter of their journey together. "Grandma," she called softly, lifting her eyes from her work, "I planted white roses here because they remind me of the day we met." Jessica, who now visited the estate regularly with her teenage sons, approached the veranda carrying the usual afternoon tea tray. "Who would have guessed," she smiled, setting the tray on the table, "that my initial worry would lead to so much happiness?" The tea set with golden butterflies, now a constant presence at their family gatherings, sparkled in the sunlight, its small kintsugi repairs telling their own stories of renewal and resilience. "You know what amazes me the most?" Mrs. Ainsworth mused, watching the triplets. How each one has discovered her own form of magic. It was true. Lily had turned her love of books into a gift for bringing people together through stories. Her reading club now included not only children, but their parents as well, forming a community bonded by the power of words. Chloe channeled her endless energy into pure creativity. Her plays, always based on real tales of love and overcoming challenges, filled everyone who watched with joy and reflection. And Violet, once so timid, had found her voice through caring for plants and people. Her therapeutic garden, as she called it, became a place of healing and peace for all who visited. "Girls," Mrs. Ainsworth called, "come here. I have something to show you." The triplets ran to the veranda, their cheeks rosy from their activities. Mrs. Ainsworth took out 3 small golden keys from her pocket, each with a different charm: a book, a theater mask, and a butterfly. "These," she explained, handing one to each girl, "are copies of the key I wear as a brooch, because this house and all the magic it holds also belongs to you now." "Just like Grandma's heart," Chloe exclaimed, hugging her key. "Exactly," Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, "because the true treasure isn't in the walls or the objects, but in the love we share." Sarah looked on with tears in her eyes, remembering how it all started. 3 little girls watching an elderly lady at the market, a spontaneous act of kindness, a mysterious envelope that would change their lives forever. "To think," she commented to Jessica, "that all this began with a simple desire to help someone carry her groceries." "Sometimes," Jessica replied, pouring tea into the butterfly-adorned cups. "The greatest miracles start with the smallest gestures." The afternoon continued peacefully, filled with laughter, stories, and the sweet melody of the music boxes, now decorating the living room. Lily soon returned to her reading club, using her new key as a special bookmark. Chloe hung hers on a ribbon, declaring it her good luck charm for all her future performances. And Violet simply smiled, placing her key next to her butterfly necklace, the 2 symbols glowing together like stars. "Grandma," Violet asked quietly while helping collect the teacups, "did you know all this was going to happen when you first met us?" Mrs. Ainsworth smiled, touching her key-shaped brooch. "No, my love. But I knew there was something special about you. Sometimes the heart recognizes its family before the mind can understand it." The sun began to set, painting the sky with pink and gold hues that made the Ainsworth estate look even more magical. The garden lanterns started to light up automatically, one of the many magical surprises the house held. Sarah watched her daughters, each immersed in her own brand of magic. Lily reading one last story for her club, Chloe practicing one last musical number, and Violet watering her plants one last time before nightfall. "You know," she said to Mrs. Ainsworth, "I think I finally understand what you meant about cracks filled with gold." The older lady smiled, seeing how her family had grown and transformed. "Yes, dear, sometimes we have to break a little to let the light in. And when we find the right people to help us mend, we become even more beautiful and strong than before." Night settled softly over the Ainsworth estate, bringing with it stars that seemed to twinkle in harmony with the garden lanterns. The triplets, tired but happy, got ready to sleep in their new rooms, each decorated to reflect their unique personalities. And while the house grew quiet, Mrs. Ainsworth sat in her favorite armchair, her key-shaped brooch glowing under the gentle lamplight. In her hands, she held the old photograph of her 3 nieces, but now, instead of sadness, her heart brimmed with gratitude. "See," she whispered to the photograph, "how love always finds a way to complete circles we once thought were broken forever." And somewhere in the stars shining above the Ainsworth estate, 3 special angels smiled, knowing that their beloved aunt had finally found the family she so richly deserved.